Well, hello, everybody. My name is Ron Harmon, and I serve in the role of presiding bishop. And I want to thank you so much for joining us for this financial update and look to the future today. We know that reading financial updates may not be the most exhilarating experience for some, so we decided to try bringing the update to you live over Zoom. It's been 18 months since Carla Long, Wim von Klinken, and I stepped into new roles in the presiding bishopric at the 2023 World Conference. It has been a momentous 18 months, but as you will hear today, amid both the challenges and the opportunities, we look to the future with hope as we pursue some key strategies in the presiding bishopric that we'll review in just a bit. So let me just do a few introductions before we get started. Phyllis Gregg coordinates our funding for mission efforts and provides support for many of the presiding bishop's strategic initiatives. She has been an essential part of the presiding bishopric for the past 13 years, and you'll have a chance to hear from her in just a minute. As a result of a generous gift from a donor couple, we are also very excited to be able to share that we've recently hired two new mission development ministers, Noelle Gafka and Aaron Kackler. And if you're intrigued by their title, we'll be sharing a little bit about how they are part of an exciting new strategy to connect with younger generations. I feel very fortunate to have such an amazing team of gifted individuals to collaborate with as we work together to fund the mission of the church. And you'll hear from each of them during the meeting today. Today, we're going to share briefly how we're doing so far this year and update you on what's happening with the historic asset sale proceeds. We're going to talk about tithing trends, a little bit about 2025 planning, and explore our strategic plans for funding mission into the future. We're not going to provide an update on the Bridge of Hope retirement responsibility today because, as we shared in February, this goal has been met and exceeded thanks to the generosity of the church. We're currently in the process of finalizing funding requirements in each nation, which includes annuitizing the USA pension plan. And we'll provide more details about this when the process is completed in the first half of 2025. So before we jump into some facts and figures, we'd like to begin with a reflection on God's creative abundance, which is the source for all that we do. Phyllis is going to lead us in this reflection. Phyllis?
Okay, I'm also doing an audio check just to make sure everybody can hear me. All right, good. Thanks, Ron, and hello, everyone. You just heard Ron use the words creative abundance. As the presiding bishopric continues to explore and discover grace and generosity and whole life stewardship, there is an invitation to live into this idea of creative abundance. Creative abundance leads us to understand God not as a God of scarcity, but one of abundance. The entire creation is a living expression of this abundance. There is enough and to spare to feed the hungry and bring hope and healing to a broken world. The challenge is to connect with God's ever-flowing stream of abundance, lifting our hearts and sights beyond the difficult realities of the present to the possibilities of God's future. In a world where many act out of fear of scarcity, we are called to live fully into the abundance of God, Doctrine and Covenants 163:11 reminds us God is calling for a prophetic community to emerge, drawn from the nations of the world, that is characterized by uncommon devotion to the compassion and peace of God revealed in Jesus Christ. Through divine grace and wisdom, this faith community has been given abundant gifts, resources, and opportunities to equip it to become such a people. We have been given abundant gifts, resources, and opportunities. It is remarkable what we have done together throughout our history. There are many examples of creative abundance, but let me share just a few. In villages in the Congo DR, Kenya, and Zambia, the nearest water source can be 4 to 6 hours away. And women and girls, bear the responsibility of fetching water daily, often spending hours, at least half a day on a round trip. This puts educational opportunities out of reach for young girls. The Council of 12, using Abolish Poverty funds, has been able to allocate funds to support the drilling of boreholes in several villages to ensure access to clean drinking water. With clean drinking water readily available, girls can devote a full day to education, while women in the village gain additional time to earn income and support family needs. In the United States, converting congregational buildings into assets for mission has resulted in new creative opportunities for ministry. In places like San Jose, California, they have found ways to utilize their property to benefit the community through a community garden and labyrinth that convey our enduring principles. There are many more examples of how creativity and abundance have intersected to reveal resources and opportunities for ministry that may not have been initially apparent. But creative abundance isn't merely about having more resources. It is about recognizing the divine potential of those resources. It is about tapping into our creativity and building on relationships within and beyond our faith community to open possibilities we did not see before. Let me just for a moment invite you to consider this question. How is the Spirit of God inviting you into creative abundance as we envision the future together? As we now transition into sharing some financial updates, I hope you will sense the possibilities inherent in God's creative abundance. So I'll turn it over to Carla now for a quick review of 2024 and Worldwide Mission Tithes trends.
Thanks, Phyllis, and hello, everyone. It's good to see your names and faces on my screen. Worldwide Mission Tithes giving is a great example of God's creative abundance. As individuals respond to God's grace and love in ways that continue to bless the church. As of August, we are approximately $185,000 above our budgeted goal for Worldwide Mission Tithes. There was a level of uncertainty about the impact the historic asset sale might have on Worldwide Mission Tithes. Right now, we are not seeing any negative effects. Obviously, we still have 4 months to go, but we are cautiously optimistic that we can meet our worldwide mission goals for 2024. There are several opportunities between now and the end of the year to focus on our response to God's abundant grace and love. The generosity cycle, which occurs between October 13th and November 17th, provides time to pause and reflect on God's blessings and the ways we can respond generously through the offering of our time, talent, treasure, and testimony. You can find generosity cycle worship services on Herald House as part of the worship helps that challenge your congregation or group to develop a communal generosity statement that can lead into a new way of looking at generosity and a new way of being. My hope is that by participating in and developing this statement, your congregation or group will discover a new spirit of generosity that is soul deepening and life-giving. Giving Tuesday is on Tuesday, December 3rd this year. The focus will be on hope in action. How our generosity makes a tangible difference in the lives of people all over the world. For example, educational endeavors in Haiti, invitational ministries for those seeking a spiritual home, and disciple and leadership development for Leading Mission. Those are just a few hope-filled ways the church is blessed by generosity. Please share with your congregations and others that Giving Tuesday is an awesome way to show hope in action. We also want to keep in mind that here in the US, at least where I am at, the state of Florida has been and is in the midst of being battered by yet another substantial storm. Our congregations and members are currently recovering from Hurricane Helene, which hit last week, and are now preparing for Hurricane Milton, which should make landfall tomorrow. If you would like to give to anyone who are affected by storms like this, then you can give to our Climate Impact Fund through etithing.org. The tile is at the top of the list at present, and your contributions will help those whose lives are affected by climate issues. We are deeply grateful for all the ways that each of you and all our current contributors generously support mission around the world. But as we've shared previously, Worldwide Mission Tithes is a downward trend as our contributor base ages and the addition of new contributors is not sufficient to replace the loss of income from these faithful contributors. Right now, we are potentially looking at a budget reduction in 2030 of $1.2 million if we don't make any progress toward reversing trends by engaging new generations and identifying new sources of income. We will be sharing some of our strategies to work towards these goals in a minute. But just as a reminder, meeting the Bridge of Hope retirement goal meant funds from the historic asset sale could be used to build up the endowments. In May, the World Church Finance Board designated $175 million from the sale proceeds to the Temple and Worldwide Mission endowments. This means The legacy of generosity represented in these assets will bless the church for years to come as income from the endowments flow into the worldwide mission budget annually and fund global mission. Vim is going to share more about this.
Thank you, Carla. So let's take a deeper look at how proceeds from the sale of historic assets are positioning us for a hopeful future. As Carla shared, at the May World Church Finance Board meeting, the board approved a resolution to move $165 million from the sale of historic assets to the Temple Endowment and $10 million to the Worldwide Mission Endowment. By placing funds in these endowments, the 3% spending rate will generate recurring annual income to the Worldwide Mission budget. The Finance Board also approved designating the endowment contribution as World Church Finance Board designated contributions. This means that the funds placed in the endowments are restricted from transfer out of the endowments unless the withdrawal is approved by a majority vote of the World Church Finance Board. Part of the funding strategy for mission into the future includes growing the liquid portion of the Temple Endowment to $200 million. The 3% spending rate from this will allow the church to fund temple ministries, mission support services, and the operations of the temple complex. Supporting the purposes of the temple and its ministries is a strategic priority of the World Church Leadership Council. As the Temple Endowment grows to support ministries, services, and operations of the temple, Worldwide Mission Tithes can increasingly fund ministries that sustain the mission initiatives, positioning the church to reach younger generations who want to connect their giving more directly to mission outcomes. This is a strategic priority of the Presiding Bishopric. With the Temple Endowment well funded, growing the Worldwide Mission Endowment will now be our emphasis. This endowment is focused on funding ministries in the USA and globally that are part of the Worldwide Mission budget. And just to close the loop, the remaining net proceeds from the sale of historic assets will be used to fund strategic priorities such as capital project needs of the temple and auditorium not covered by the Temple Endowment, and the telling of our sacred story in conjunction with the Historic Sites Foundation. If you've got questions, please be sure to put those in the chat, and I already saw some of them coming in, or in the Q&A part, so we can address them at the end of our presentation. And I saw that some have already been answered in the chat as well. For now, let's turn our attention to 2025. And Carla, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Did you miss me? I feel like you did. As we've been planning the worldwide mission budget for 2025 with the World Church Finance Board, we continue to monitor trends. For example, in 2023, 95% of contributions to Worldwide Mission Tithes came from the USA fields, 4% from Canada, and 1% from other multi-nation fields. We're very much aware that numbers only tell part of the story about how generosity is expressed globally. Let me share a quick example. In the Messina congregation in Kinshasa, members reconstructed, expanded, and renovated their old church building from the foundation to the roof. The church building has new tiles, new doors, and windows. This project was completed with funds raised locally. At the same time, Messina also supports regional mission projects through the Mission Center. Church leaders continue to be grateful for all the ways people around the world support both local and global mission. Let me share a couple of other trends. The number of individual contributor households declined from 6,334 in 2022 to 6,157 in 2023. 4,249, or 70% of those 6,157 contributors in the US and Canada were over the age of 65. Let me say that again. 4,249, or 70% of those 6,157 contributors in the USA and Canada were over the age of 65. Those same 4,249 contributor households gave 8.2 million, or 76% of all worldwide mission tithes. This is a familiar narrative. We are still largely dependent on those age 65 plus in the United States and Canada to support our worldwide mission budget. Our ability to reverse this trend means creating new connecting points where younger generations of generous disciples can engage in our mission. That's why the Presiding Bishopric's first strategic priority is to engage new generations in mission by developing resources and technology-based applications to teach children about generosity and their connection to the broader world. By hiring and deploying 2 mission development ministers focused on engaging those under the age of 65 in the United States in mission leading to opportunities for generous response. And by engaging 2 advisory and advocacy groups for ages 25 to 45 and 46 to 65 to advise and support the Presiding Bishopric in reaching these critical age groups. We're so pleased to report that we've already hired the 2 mission development ministers made possible by the gift of a generous donor couple. A week ago, we had an energizing weekend as we explored new strategies and possibilities with the 2 new mission development advisory teams that are also now in place, focused on each age group. I'm excited to give Noelle and Aaron a moment now to share a little bit more about their work.
Well, thank you. And hello to all of you. Oh my goodness, it is so exciting to see how many of you came to be in this session with us today. Thank you. It means the world that you are here. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I am a 70, and I do have this passion of helping people connect with the love and peace of Christ in community in ways that release their potential and help them to see how they can be a part of our mission and find ways to contribute to our mission. Now, as a part of my work, I'll be traveling across the field in the US. You might see me in your area. And I'll be participating in ministry events, engaging in personal visits, and inviting the young adults to discover the joy of generously responding to God's love. And as Carla just shared, I am also leading this team of amazing, wonderfully gifted and creative individuals that will be focused on opening doors for engagement with individuals and families between the ages of 25 to 45. And I don't need to tell you this part. It is pretty well known that there is a limited participation of this age group currently within the life of the church. And we can't necessarily approach our work with this age group from a traditional funding for mission perspective. But our first step needs to be how to focus on these individuals and families so that they can connect and we can connect to their concerns, aspirations, and sense of call with the church's mission. And it might be through some non-traditional entry points. Now, the 25 to 45 mission development team, which is here with us today in this session, will play an essential role in envisioning creative new entry points into community, as well as opportunities to provide focused education on financial topics relevant to life and the needs and the interests that come within our lives. Now, these opportunities will provide meaningful chances to connect with others in community, and that's something that we do best. And we view the mission development team, the one that I'm working with, as kind of a research and development group. And the processes and learnings will kind of shape our approach to engagement with this group over time. But now what I want to do is I'm going to turn this over to Erin so Erin can share a little bit about her and her work with the 45 to 65 group.
Thanks, Noelle. I appreciate it. Hi, friends. I'm working with the 46 to 65 age group, and it represents different challenges and opportunities. And although there are more individuals in this age group who are actively engaged in church life, there is opportunity for growth. Our focus will be on connecting a personal sense of calling and giftedness with opportunity for continued engagement in mission and opportunities to fund that mission. It is essential to make a compelling case for why Community of Christ is a worthy investment for the future. And similar to the 25 to 45 age group, we need to explore new entry points for missional engagement with those in the 46 to 65 age group not actively participating in Community of Christ. Providing focused education on financial topics relevant to their life stages and interests will also be important. And like Noelle, I also have a passion for being in authentic relationship and listening to people's stories and helping them connect with and find meaning in our life-changing mission. I believe this begins with spiritual formation. It is the movement of the Spirit that leads to transformative encounters, stirring us to respond generously and courageously. And I'll be traveling throughout the US, engaging in events and visits and hosting educational opportunities. But Noelle and I cannot do this alone. It is with the support of our mission development advisory teams, field leaders, and apostles that will help us envision future opportunities and facilitate connections. We do know this work will be challenging, but we look forward with excitement and anticipation to what the Spirit will accomplish as we move in faith and connect with new disciples and cultivate a spirit of generosity. And back to you, Ron.
Thank you, Erin. I want to thank both Erin and Noelle, and we recognize that it is challenging work, but it's so important to our future, and we're so grateful to have both Erin and Noelle on our team. As you just heard, working toward engaging younger generations through creativity and collaboration is our first strategic priority. We know that encounters with meaningful expressions of community of Christ lead to a desire to respond generously. We're so confident in this that we factored new contributions from these younger generations into our 2025 planning assumptions shared with the World Church Finance Board in May. As we work with the Finance Board, we plan income and expenses over multiple years to create operational stability and to provide time for missional and financial strategies to develop. The plan we presented to the World Church Finance Board in May showed income and expenses sustainable through 2029. The 5-year plan that we shared is based on these factors. Endowment income will grow over time and become a more significant source of income to the worldwide mission budget. And outcomes from the Presiding Bishopric's strategic plan to engage new generous disciples in our mission will begin to impact the budget as early as 2025. We will present a 2025 budget to the World Church Finance Board for approval this December. The 2025 budget will continue current ministries and services and also include some salary adjustments for staff based on a market analysis that was completed this year. And the approved 2025 budget will be reported to the church, as is our typical practice, in the December 2024 financial update. So as we shared earlier, we need to identify and implement new sources of income to avoid a projected budget reduction in 2030. The Presiding Bishopric has identified 5 strategic priorities to work toward this goal, and I want to just run through those 5 with you briefly. First, we're going to be engaging new generations of disciples and seekers in our transforming mission, including whole life stewardship response to that mission. Second, we're going to explore and implement new sources of income to build endowments and sustain focused support of our global mission. Third, we'll be exploring and implementing some new partnership models to share gifts of ministry, story, leadership, and finances across fields and mission centers and congregations throughout the church. Fourth, we're going to be increasing effective utilization of all of our facilities with a particular focus on our international headquarters facilities for mission. And fifth, we're going to be experimenting with new ways to convey and live our principles of generosity and commitment to economic justice, offering hope for a sustainable future for all. Now, one of the questions you may be asking at this juncture is, how can we be facing a potential budget reduction in 2030 after placing $175 million in our endowments? Well, the $175 million placed in our endowments was essential to avoid significant budget reductions in 2025 due to those declining worldwide mission ties trends that Carla just shared a few moments ago. Although the $175 million placed in our endowments will generate recurring income into the future, Worldwide Mission Ties as an income source continues to decline as contributors age, and we're not replacing that lost income with new income from younger generations. This is, of course, why engaging new, generous disciples in our mission is essential to our funding strategy now and in the future. It's also critical to our missional strategy as a movement to embody Christ's peace in the world. This will require every one of us. What new relationships are you cultivating in the places you live and work and find renewal? And what new invitations are you extending to those in search of a spiritual home? So again, we just want to remind you as we begin to draw the presentation part of this to a close, that you can continue to put your questions in the chat. So Vim is going to share just a brief recap of the funding strategy for the future. Vim?
Thanks, Ron. So as an overview, putting $165 million in the temple endowment, combined with the current endowment asset of approximately $35 million, will fund global mission support services, operations of the temple complex, and ministries of the temple expressed in independence and globally. Putting $10 million in the Worldwide Mission Endowment, combined with current endowment assets of approximately $3 million, will provide a substantive start toward growing this endowment as a source of income to fund resources and ministry that directly support our mission initiatives across the globe. With mission support services and operations of the temple complex supported by endowment income, Worldwide Mission Tithes will be available to primarily fund new mission partnership opportunities that will enable the exchange of resources between fields and mission centers, opportunities for designated giving, matching specific contributor interests and passions with missional opportunities, and C, opportunities to give with no designation or to use where needed most to support global mission. Linking Worldwide Mission Tithes more directly to mission in these ways connects well with younger generations who want to see a clear connection between their contributions and mission outcomes. Ron?
Thanks, Vim. Well, that's definitely an important piece of our funding strategy for the future. A quick reminder to explore the generosity cycle in the worship helps beginning October 13th, and to prepare to participate in Giving Tuesday on December 3rd. So before we move to questions, I just want to say thank you for the continued generosity of the church, expressed in so many ways, in leadership, in ministry, in financial contributions that fund life-changing ministries. Stories of faith and transforming love remind us that we are instruments of divine grace as we respond wholeheartedly to God's call and vision in our time. It's our prayer in the Presiding Bishopric that we may all be blessed with vision and courage as we creatively expand our capacity to be the embodiment of God's love and peace in the world. So I'm now going to turn it over to Becca to help with facilitating some questions.
I think Becca's actually tossed it over to me, so I'm going to help answer some questions, or not answer. I'm going to help facilitate some question and answers. So let's see. We have some in the chat. Phyllis has been doing a really great job of providing some answers. I have to ratchet myself back for translation pace. Apologies, translators. I'm going to go ahead and ask these just so that everyone has a chance to hear the answer as well as potentially read it. There are a couple of questions that deal with some of the ways that we are tracking donations and people in terms of the data that that was shared. So the question, I guess, is the data that was provided in the figures Carla mentioned, are we correct to assume that that data source only includes secure give, so only available in the US, cash checks in tithing envelopes, or other approved giving such as PAT or e-transfer in Canada? So in other words, if you made a donation without a tithing envelope or without an electronic giving account, would that be included?
So I can answer that quickly. So if congregations record any data in Shelby, so if you put a check in the offering plate or if you put cash and it somehow is attributed to you and your congregational financial officer enters that in Shelby, then it would be counted. So our numbers include contributors and contributions in the United States and Canada that are entered into our Shelby database.
Thank you, Phyllis. There was a follow-up question about Canada Helps and other like what we call intermediate. Do you know if Canada Helps contributions get entered into Shelby?
I don't specifically have the answer to that. If there's somebody on here from Canada that might, I'm assuming that they are entered in Shelby. I believe that is correct, that they are.
Yeah, Phyllis, this is Sam. Yes, they are.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. There's also a question about whether we're only tracking Worldwide Mission Tithes contributions or whether we also track local or mission center giving.
We do track those, yes. We just are not reporting on that information at this session, but yes, we do track that.
Thank you. Then there's a question about the temple endowment balance. I think just some clarification. The question is, so is the balance in the temple endowment actually around 210 million?
Yeah, I'll take that.
Okay.
That's correct. However, part of it is still in real estate. So because it's in real estate, we do not take a spending rate yet from it, not until the real estate has been sold. And when we talk about real estate, that's particularly those lands we've got in Eastern Jackson County.
So is it true to say the spending rate is taken off of the liquid portion of
That's
the
correct conclusion, Jen.
Okay. No one will ever ask me to be in the Presiding Bishopric, I promise. Okay. This question was asked over in the Q&A portion of the website or of Zoom. And Noelle already kind of answered it, so thank you, Noelle. Gwen asked whether this new initiative and hiring 2 people, just wondering what some of the things they could look forward to happening in Canada, both in the East and in the West. And Noelle, I don't know if you just want to reiterate your question or recap your answer for everyone.
Absolutely, I can definitely do that.
Thanks.
So how I answered that was, right now our focus is going to be on the USA in terms of our traveling and focus groups, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to talk with you in Canada. I'm in Toronto right now, so we want to be able to share ideas and inspiration and find ways to allow the spirit to move. And I can tell you that there is a strong energy in Canada and the US right now. And I am so excited to see where that spirit's going to go. But as of right now, Aaron and I are going to be based in the US, but we're always going to be sharing what we know. And who knows, it might inspire something even greater than what's already happening in Canada right now.
Thanks, Noelle. I'm going to go with the shorter question first, and then we'll go to Shelby's questions, which Shelby has lots of questions. I love them all. There was no mention of maybe projected increased giving from nations beyond North America. Since it appears that's where the growth is happening, is there an expectation of increased support for World Church anytime soon?
I'll answer that question.
Thanks, Ron.
We are excited about the growth of the church, particularly in some of our developing nations. And as we've worked with the apostolic leaders in those parts of the church, their primary focus right now has been working with local leaders and disciples as those areas have a desire to move toward a greater level of self-sufficiency. But even in the midst of that, we still receive contributions from those parts of the world in terms of Worldwide Mission Tithes. So there's that sense of global connection, but also that desire to continue to want to be able to move toward a higher level of self-sufficiency in terms of supporting the missional efforts and engagement that's occurring in those places.
Thanks, Ron. Shelby's questions are all, like, they're very good, specific questions. They're all kind of centered around, I think, this idea of how church is being lived out differently sometimes outside of maybe a traditional Sunday morning congregational gathering. So I think I'm going to kind of try to distill this down into maybe like 1 or 2 main questions. The idea is, if you have a group that is engaged locally with mission, how are we imagining to bridge the gap between, people who are engaged in mission locally and connecting them to something that is bigger than themselves or broader than themselves, more like kind of the global mission of the church? How do we do that? What does that look like, etc.?
Yeah, I'll jump in and give a brief answer to that. I too like Shelby's questions. They're really right on target with a lot of the conversations that we're having. And I spent 18 years on the Council of 12 side before coming into the Presiding Bishopric. And so I can tell you that those are the kind of questions that we were struggling with as well. In terms of local congregations and kind of that connection to the broader mission of the church, I mentioned this idea of mission partnerships. And we see opportunities in the future. And we're working with the Council of 12 on this right now in terms of developing what mission partnerships could look like. across jurisdictions where there would be opportunities for a congregation to connect with another congregation or a mission center to connect with another congregation, in another field, another part of the world. And in some cases, that would involve sharing of financial resources, but we're really looking at those partnerships as partnerships of mutuality, so that there's gifts of leadership, there's gifts of testimony and ministry to be shared that from a missional standpoint have great value beyond just sharing financial resources. And so we see those mission partnerships creating this free flow, this free exchange of missional resources across jurisdictional boundaries and connecting us even more as a global church as we move into the future. So that's just one of the ways we're really excited about seeing that hopefully develop over time.
Just to kind of go a little deeper on that, is there any reason why a mission partnership, that's the word you're talking, that's the phrase, right? Mission partnership could not happen between a non-traditional kind of model of people gathering or community gathering?
Absolutely. In fact, we just talked about this in Council of 12 meetings that I was in last week, that whether it's a small group that's meeting, whether it's some kind of new expression of mission, absolutely. We see ourselves facilitating, the exchange of I'll call them missional resources between different groups, different jurisdictions, and part of what we were exploring this past week is how the Council of 12 can be engaged with us in cultivating that spirit and opportunity throughout the church.
Very cool. Shelby, I hope that got to like the heart of your questions. We will capture all of those questions that were asked, just so that the bishops have those, to further reflect on. And I think that wraps up the last question that we had in the chat. Let me double check over in the Q&A.
Hey, Jen, it's Carla. I just wanted to add a little bit more to Shelby's question, if I could.
Yeah, of course.
What I've learned in the last 18 months and the last 12 years of being a bishop is that allowing people or having multiple places for people to give is a good idea, meaning giving locally, giving to mission partnerships, giving globally, giving to wherever else. A multitude of places to give is a good thing. So if in these gatherings of people, you talk about all the different things that are happening in all of those different places, it excites people and they can find their passion, they can find their calling, and generosity will flow both ways. So I would say anytime that you can talk about those opportunities in any capacity, we should be talking about them. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Carla.
And I might just say that as we begin to work toward implementing mission partnerships, and you have an opportunity in the church to begin to see some of these opportunities, I think that'll become more clear how you can connect people to some of those new opportunities. So we're not quite there yet, but we're looking at being able to move more intentionally into this new exciting area of global connection in the first quarter of 2025.
Okay. Well, thanks for all of your questions. I will turn it back over to the PB for any last closing remarks and let you end our meeting today.
Well, we just all want to express our appreciation. The Presiding Bishopric is always excited when anybody shows up for a gathering that we are hosting. So we're so grateful that you chose to come and be with us. We invite your questions anytime that you have. You can send them to us individually or at the presidingbishopric.org email address, and one of us will respond to them or call you and talk with you, whatever you would prefer. But we are very, very interested in continuing to hear and engage with the church as we continue to explore together how we engage new generations in mission and opportunities to respond to that mission in meaningful ways as we move into the future. So thank you so much for being a part of our gathering today.